years. But I also pointed out that incarceration alone could not solve our drug problem. We needed to find more resources to support rehabilitation, treatment, and reentry programs to help those who have made mistakes and who wanted to get their lives back on track. As we know, especially you in the media, speeches and press releases don't produce results by themselves. After taking office, we prioritized looking for ways that we could get resources to help assist in combating drugs on Guam. In June of 2019, I attended the first meeting from our office relating to opioid investigations and the impact of the opioid crisis across the country and also in Guam. After coming back to the office, we started working with our partners to try to figure out what the extent of the opioid issues were here. As a result of those investigations, we filed suit against Purdue Pharmaceuticals in August of 2019, which was the first time our office had filed a complaint of that kind. Since that time, we have continued to work with AG offices across the country in investigating and, where necessary, taking action against companies who have contributed to the opioid crisis. Those efforts have resulted in why we're here today, which is our office securing $280,000 for Guam to combat the opioid epidemic and to assist in drug treatment and rehabilitation. This is part of a larger settlement joined by all 5 territories as well as 47 states against McKinsey Consulting, which is one of the largest consulting companies in the world. They worked with Purdue Pharmaceuticals to target high prescribers, and they encouraged physicians to prescribe OxyContin knowing of their addictive properties. Under the terms of the settlement, McKinsey will create a document repository and will submit tens of thousands of documents that will be publicly available, similar to what was done under the master settlement agreement with tobacco companies. There is also going to be a payment of $573 million. Of that amount, we have secured $280,000 for Guam. This is the largest non-tobacco settlement our office has ever received, and we expect that we will receive an initial payment of $230,000 within the next 60 days, with the remaining $48,000 to be paid out over 4 years at $12,000 per year. Under the terms of the settlement, these funds will put directly towards addressing the opioid epidemic in Guam, as well as the drug problem. Now, to talk about how that exactly will work. There's a need for an immediate injection of resources and funds to those who are providing direct services to people struggling with addiction. And in particular, I know that we have identified Oasis, Lighthouse, Guam Behavioral, as well as court-run programs. We've identified approximately $100,000 that we want to provide, and RSAT, I want to mention RSAT and DOC. We want to, of the $230,000 initial payment, we want to dedicate $100,000 to direct services. One of the things that has come up during our meetings with other AG's offices is that we do not have good data. We are expressly excluded from the CDC statistics on opioid overdose deaths, and it has been to our detriment. So right now, most of our data is coming from those who voluntarily seek treatment or those who are arrested and part of the court system. In order to assist with the collection of data and to help us get a better picture of not only opioids, but the drug problem as a whole on the island, we want to spend approximately $80,000 in performing toxicology reports so that we can get an idea, a baseline of just how expansive the problem is on Guam. And one of the issues, if we only use arrests and voluntary treatment, it's like using speeding tickets to figure out how many people on the island speed. It's a very limited number that we're capturing. With the remaining $50,000, we want to support the development of a local preventative campaign and also a campaign that will show what resources are available locally to those who are struggling with addiction. You shouldn't have to get arrested to get resources to help with your addiction issues or mental health issues. This is the first and largest settlement that Guam has ever seen, and I believe with our hardworking team, it's not going to be the last settlement that we obtain for Guam and that we secure for Guam. Moving forward, we are going to reach out to law enforcement, to service providers, and to identify other ways that we can effectively use future settlement funds that we receive through our opioid litigation. This would not have happened without the hard work of our Consumer Protection Division. I know some people may believe you wake up, roll out of bed, and there's a $280,000 check that's on its way to Guam, but that is not what happened at all. We've had our Consumer Protection Division has been waking up in the middle of the night to be on these calls with their offices. They've been working with our agency partners to get data. And I do want to give a shout out to our Chief of Staff, Fred Nishihira, and his team, Assistant Attorneys General, Jojo Perez, Janice Camacho, Marina Julian, Ben Pohoki, as well as our team of paralegals, Emma Jean Lamb, and Baron Meadow and Jen Duenas, if you're down there. They are helping us run, and this is just one part of the work that they are helping us with. So with that, Carlina, we can open up the floor to questions.
Okay, thank you, AG Camacho. So again, we'll have a 2-minute open discussion with the AG per news outlet present with us here. And then we will follow with a round of questions for clarification. Why don't we go ahead and begin with John with the Post.
Hello.
Aside from the feedback, we can hear you, John.
Okay, is this any better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Great. AG, you mentioned a group of organizations who would be receiving, was it 100K or 200K?
John, we're looking at $100,000 that will go to those who are providing direct services to people who are struggling with addiction. 100,000.
Those were Oasis, RSAT. Did you mention any other organizations?
Well, this is where we're doing the research now, but the ones that we've identified that we know for sure not only deal with drug rehabilitation, but in particular have populations that are struggling with opioid use disorder. So those would be Oasis, Lighthouse Recovery, Guam Behavioral New Beginnings, as well as there are some court-run programs that assist with these issues.
Okay. And that was 80K for review of toxicology reports, right?
That's correct.
So what will happen to the other 100K?
The 50,000 will go towards the development of the outreach campaign, the local campaign, and that would be that would account for the initial $230,000 payment. So the remaining will be paid out $12,000 over the next 4 years, and those funds will be used for supplies and equipment for the direct service providers. All
right. Have you spoken with Oasis and these other organizations about how they plan to use the funding?
Well, we've been under an embargo, and I know one of the people on this call saw the leaked story that hit the news about end of business here. So we have, to the best of our abilities, tried to not reveal that we were entering into the settlement, but I know for a fact that there are wait lists at all of the entities that we've mentioned. I think anecdotally, I've heard 5 to 10 people with opioid use disorder were treated at Oasis, and speaking with one of their staff. I know for a fact that Guam Behavioral has a new inpatient treatment program for opioid use disorder. So we know there's a need for this.
Right. And can you say how the money will be distributed among the organizations?
I can't get into the specifics with you right now, John, but when we get that out, we will make sure we contact you.
Okay. Teresa, I'm glad you mentioned the statistics, because when Bill 388-35, the 35th legislature, they did ask, there were some questions asked about more information being needed. And back then, Teresa Rayola, the head of behavioral health, said, they were only seeing about 15% coming in for treatment, and the rest were coming in for methamphetamine, 15% for opioids, the rest for methamphetamine. So I guess I want to know what you think about how much of a problem opioid use is on Guam, since you are pursuing this kind of initiative even before this information came out. So.
Well, we know, I think I made the comment that this is not a front page problem. So, but it doesn't mean that it's not a problem. And one of the things that's different about opioids is you can be legally addicted to opioids and not be able to, law enforcement would have no reason to be involved in it. So that is the problem. How do we know what types of resources are needed to fight the opioid problem if we don't know how extensive the opioid problem is? You need resources to figure out how extensive the problem is, and then you can direct more resources there. So that's why we've identified $80,000 to give us a baseline of just how many people are struggling with opioid addiction. And a very concrete example was I was talking to a doctor, and he had a patient who died because of and this person had a history of opioid abuse, and there was some suggestion, well, maybe this person overdosed, fell, and hit their head, but there wasn't additional toxicology reports done to determine whether or not there was opioids present in their blood. So those are the types of cases we want to be able to capture and just see what the problem is. And that'll help Guam Behavioral, I'm sure, as they're moving forward with their grants and securing more funding as well.
Am I time? Is it time?
Yes, thank you very much. KUAM, if you'd like to go next.
Okay. Good morning, AG. Good morning, AG.
A little louder, please, Chris.
Good morning, AG. I just wanted to ask, are we paying anything with attorney's fees?
For attorney's fees, well, Chris, this is one of those unique situations where no states have filed yet. This is the first case. All 47 states, this is the first action that they've taken. This is the first action any of the territories have taken. 15 million of the $573 million is going to be set aside to go to the National Association of Attorneys General to assist with the document repository, but also to reimburse for costs that were incurred. But as far as attorney's fees, I don't believe that that's provided for or will be taken out. In terms of our office, this is a deceptive trade practices lawsuit, which would fall under our purview. But we know this money is intended to go back to combating the opioid problem and the drug problems. And that's why we've identified giving that money back and getting where it's gonna make a difference.
Yeah. AG, I wanted to ask your position on Bill 6.
Chris, you're gonna have to help me out, but I'm not sure. Bill 6.
Bill 6 is
Go ahead.
the measure by Senator Talina Nelson. It's a new version of her Bill 388.
This has to do with limiting how many
Right.
prescriptions in a day or
Right.
successively you can give.
Right.
It has a couple of requiring review of patient prescription history, development of practitioner prescription report cards, a 7-day supply limit of opioid prescriptions, mandatory discussion of opioid risks and alternatives, establishment of a prescriber-patient agreement.
I know it was introduced last term. I know there were some doctors that came out in particular who deal with cancer patients, and you have to find an appropriate balance between physician discretion and combating opioid abuse.
Right.
So I have to take a look at it, to be quite honest. I know she wanted to implement this, but I will say that the prescription drug monitoring program could use some resources. So
Yeah.
that might be another one down the road that we look at potentially adding.
AG, I know that
It's very hard to we can implement all these mandates, but unless you have the resources to execute it properly, you're just creating, more issues for people to go through and without knowing what the outcome is going to be. So, I would want to talk to the physicians and the pharmacists to see how pervasive it is, what we can do short of a very firm limit, 7 days, and you need to come back.
AG, I know that our statistics might not be as bad as the opioid stats in the States, but do we have currently an accurate way to measure through toxicology or other types of tests, postmortem, whether or not people are dying from opioid abuse? Is that something that we need to kind of shore up, or is it something that we're able to do?
We don't have that, Chris, and we know we've been tracking it through the amount of naloxone that is the antidote to opioid overdose.
Right.
That is administered at GMH to get a baseline. And I think anecdotally we hear it's anywhere between 2 to 4 patients per month that are getting treated at GMH for overdosing on opioids.
Right.
We also know that Guam Behavioral has started their inpatient program. I believe they had anywhere between 20 to 40 consumers that came in for assistance with opioid use disorder specifically between 2015 and 2020. So it's out there. It's just, we may not be capturing if people are dying of it or when they're dying of
Right.
an overdose.
So that being said, AG, did we miss out on a bigger settlement because we don't have an accurate way to track the
Well, Chris,
opioid?
I will tell you that the most important part was being in the room. And as these discussions are going on and allocations being brought up, there are proposals out there that the territories would get absolutely nothing because we don't have any metrics to explain just how bad the problem is here. So, going back to the importance of being in the room when these things are happening, and even just raising your hand and saying, "Hey, Guam here, we have an opioid problem too. Please don't forget about us." So, could we have gotten more? Possibly, but it'll tell you that this is the first substantial settlement that any multi-states have arrived at in this large of a bipartisan group. So it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And allocation is one of the biggest things that is subject to very intense debate.
Right. And I mean, no, congratulations on this,
Yeah.
AG. I mean, it's $280,000 we didn't have yesterday to fight this
Absolutely.
issue. But I'm just saying, like, we keep talking anecdotally and we don't know how bad the problem is. But I mean, if you just track the media reports, there have been huge busts that GPD has made with prescription pills, or I'm talking like hundreds and hundreds of pills. There was something just last year in MTM, right, where GFD had to come out with the hazmat suit. So it's definitely here. So.
Well, and Chris, someone brought up to me, and I don't have a medicine cabinet anymore, but we support the Take Back Drug Initiative. And I realized a lot of people still have medicine cabinets, and this is where there might be problems. You go and you have your wisdom tooth pulled, and they give you a prescription, but you don't end up using it. You leave it in your medicine cabinet. You have a nephew or a niece or your kids, and they're just taking one pill at a time, and no one's keeping track of those pills after they're done. So I'm hoping with this campaign that we really emphasize multi-generational, one, to young people, what the dangers of opioid addiction are, but two, for those who have prescription opioids, please dispose of them properly. Don't just leave them around your house because that's how people might get addicted. And it is unique because it's legal, and that we keep coming back to that. Mm-hmm. As opposed to ICE, which is automatically, if you have a pipe in your car, you're going to be subject to a felony. If you pull someone over and they have opioids in their car, as long as they have a legal prescription, they're okay.
Right. Thank you, AG. I didn't know we only had 2 minutes. I wasn't here for the rules. Thank you, Carlina.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, KUAM. PDN, if you'd like to go next.
Yes, thank you. If someone use their mic, that'd be awesome. Okay, yeah. So AG, could you comment on the other pending lawsuits related to this issue and whether or not you anticipate Guam will receive future settlement payouts?
That's what we're working on, Steve. We're actively involved in these investigations. We're obviously limited in what we can say. We filed against Purdue. They are currently in bankruptcy court. So this payment and the distribution of assets is what is going to be the big fight between the states, territories, municipalities, counties, attorneys' fees. We have a few other investigations that we're part of, but I can't really get into the specifics at this point. This is a little bit different because the payment is going to be within the next 60 days. This is not a press release about $280,000 at some point. We have some certainty based on the judgment that we've executed that it's going to be made within the next 60 days.
And going back to the toxicology reports, so who exactly would be tested? Are we talking about people who are arrested, people you find dead? Who would be tested for like tox screen?
Interestingly, we came up with this idea in talking with the Hawaii Haida folks and how they've developed a baseline for their opioid problem. They perform toxicology reports at their medical examiner's office for everyone who's deceased. So we're going to be in communication with their office to figure out what we need on the software side, so we can collect the data in a usable format, and then we can turn it over to the legislature as an example if they have a baseline and they want to take action based on the available data. But we would be working with the CME and GMH.
Got it. Thank you.
You have a minute left, Steve. Would you like to use it up, or shall we move on to PNC?
We can move on. Thanks, Colleen.
Great. Okay. PNC?
Yes, good morning, AG. Is there a chance of individual payouts regarding this lawsuit? What happens if, for example, someone comes in and an opioid abuse victim and says that, he or she wants to be compensated because Guam won the lawsuit.
That's not what the settlement provides for the harm. Well, it's to support state or territorial efforts for drug abatement. So there is not an opportunity for an individual to submit claim to receive a monetary award out of this judgment or settlement.
Would something like that, AG, happen in the future? I mean, a separate lawsuit, can something be filed or no?
That would typically be a larger class action suit, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure if or how those are being filed, but that's not the basis of the claim that we filed here.
Okay.
And Jerry, the whole point, I guess, would be if someone is struggling with addiction issues, that's why we've made the decision we want to support those who are providing services to people struggling with abuse. So we may not be able to give you cash, but if you're in need of services, that's where this money is going.
Okay. Is there any other lawsuit on the horizon that the AG joined? Any other joint lawsuit?
We'll be sure to let you know. Other than Purdue, we have a few other things that we're working on and investigating, but I don't have anything else for you at this time.
Okay, thank you, AG. That's it, Carlina. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. John with the Post, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, just for the additional lawsuits. The AG back in February mentioned, or they issued a release on a 1.6 billion settlement with the manufacturer Millen Crot. I know the AG said that he'll give us some information when that comes, but can you comment on this one?
The investigation's going, and we're still in discussions. We're not at a posture right now to give you any more details other than that, John.
Okay, thank you.
KUAM?
We're good, Carlina. Thank you.
Oh,
Wait.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Hi,
we're good.
Sabrina.
Hi,
Chris?
we're good. Thank you. We've got to cut out of this live stream.
Right.
So
Okay, great.
congratulations
Thank you, AG.
again. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Carlina.
Thanks.
Yes,
Okay, PNC.
All right, 9:26. There you go. That was a live press conference coverage of the Attorney General who announced that as part of a
$73 million dollar settlement.
Right, we're getting $280,000. I believe he said the $200,000 will be paid within a month, and then we'll get the rest, which is I believe whatever the rest is, we're going to get it in $12,000 a year increments. This money is supposed to go directly to services. And then they're also going to do a study to find out exactly how bad the opioid problem is on Guam, right, Bree? Yeah.
Right. There was a public hearing when we asked about Bill 6.
Right.
I believe it was scheduled for earlier this week, same day as the Port Oversight hearing, but it was postponed until a later date. So.
Right, and I just want to say, like what AG had talked about with the lack of the tests that we need to do to kind of get an accurate read on how bad the opioid problem is on Guam. It's bad, guys. It's very bad. I got a lot of friends who, sadly are tangled up in this. I mean, there's just a lot of people out there who are getting pills easily in many cases, who are just using this medication, don't have any kind of condition or whatever. I mean, they're smoking it, they're snorting it, so it's bad. And you can tell. So I was trying to ask AG about, like, how bad is it? Because we see GPD, they make these busts. Like, there was a guy that they busted a couple years ago. He had like thousands of pills. There was also a raid that they did in MTM. You remember this, Bree?
Yes, I was there.
Oh, you were there, exactly. She was there. And so what they had found was that these guys were allegedly making the pills. So they had a pill press. And there was a bunch of substances that GPD had found. So it's definitely out there. It just hasn't bubbled over the surface in a way where we can accurately track it. So that's why I wanted to ask, like, could we have gotten more money? I mean, yeah. And he was like, yeah, we could have. But
yeah. So again, $280,000 from this multi-state settlement regarding opioids. Part of it will go into the study that Chris was talking about. Other funding will be used to develop outreach and education on addiction.
Right.
So congratulations to the AG's office.
Yeah,
on
and
this,
then
win.
Yep, and it kind of seems like we're on a lot of these other lawsuits, the national type lawsuits. So I don't know. I'll admit I've been critical of it. Like, oh, we're letting criminals walk, but we're joining all these lawsuits. But I can see at the end of the day that there's some rewards to reap. Obviously, it's 9:28. We're gonna take